this Young Republicans meeting and all the hubbub?
What about it?
He was there.
Nothing really happened.
Come on, don't say that.
You tried to get my boys to go.
Oh gosh! Oh, I hope Al Gerhardt isn't watching that.
So what is? First of all, what for the people like me who are just wondering what the heck's going on around here? Tell us about the Young Republicans. What are they?
Well, I didn't know much about the group because they are it's seemingly a vestigial group.
Wait a minute, but you want to take over them.
I had never attended a meeting. I don't know that I'd ever been invited to, despite being very involved in politics for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
The Tulsa chapter doesn't really meet. I don't know when their last meeting was.
You have to ask Rachel Brewer.
Never been invited. I don't think the chair or co-chair was at the national meeting. But the deal was, Al Gerhardt's got some of the story right. He takes umbrage with my actions, which is his constitutional right to do, and I'll defend it to the death.
Al doesn't care if it's constitutional or not. He
doesn't want constitutional grounds.
No.
So these Young Republicans, they get together, they meet, and what do?
No, mostly drink,
Yeah,
fight.
There's a social club, and right now you've got maybe less than 5 active local groups, is my understanding.
Yeah. So the idea is, I don't know what the idea is. The idea is that it is a way for young people to get involved with the Republican Party. But I don't see these guys, being someone who's around a lot of campaigns, knocking on a lot of doors, distributing thousands of pieces of literature, etc. I don't see these young Republicans out there.
Now that we know who they are.
So I really don't know.
Yeah, I have to say,
I went to the meeting, so.
The Republican Party, much like the Democrat Party, has, their young Republicans, anyone under 40. Then they have college Republicans that are organized by college campus. Then there's teen Republicans, which is also organized county level. And so those are just auxiliary groups in their party. Just give you a little sense of it. And
You got the Knights of the Republican Party.
Yeah. So the biannual convention to elect new officers, I believe 2-year terms, came up this particular weekend. Past weekend.
I'm taking notes.
And so they now John Roberts, who has served as state chair, and I don't think this is his first time. He's been very involved in the YRs for probably at least the last decade. But he's stepping down, and yet they're trying to get people to show up. The rules, like most conventions and that, the counties that are sending delegations supposed to send those at least a week in advance so that you can give all those names of delegates to the candidates so that the candidates can begin campaigning at least 5 days in advance and connecting and say, yes, I'm running. Do you have any questions or anything like that? But
we made history, by the way, to interject. We're going to get there. Oklahoma's chapter made history. I don't think this has ever been done before. What happened? So continue, David.
So they had, like anything, you don't have a convention until you seat the credential delegates. So you have a credentials reports first thing. And the credentials has to follow the bylaws and stuff. And one of the very vaguely worded terms was this at-large delegation, which is supposed to get 5 votes. Well, depending how you look at it, there could be just 1 at-large, or some people contend that, well, that just means in an organized county, that county gets 5. And then they said, organized county get an additional 15. So it's like a 4-to-1 ratio. If you're with the organized people, your votes count 4 times.
And my only complaint is just a complaint on preference, right? Was that this is very similar to the DNC's superdelegate system that strongly favored Hillary Clinton. Does it not sound like that?
Well, a superdelegate would be to say somebody, because they're an elective office, they're automatically a delegate.
Yeah, so it's analogous to, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, for instance, Senator Dom was there. He's a young Republican, but I don't think he got additional delegate votes because he
No, the idea is that it's heavily weighted. So these chartered clubs, get many times the vote
Yeah.
representation of the unchartered clubs.
Right, and what they're trying to do, of course, like anything, you want every county to have a Young Republicans, right? And so
they could just never meet. It's
Okay.
great to have the name there, so
So
it exists
they said
out there in the entropy of space, and it never does anything ever. So good.
Prior to that change, only organized clubs could be delegates. So if Tulsa didn't have a chapter, Tulsa couldn't send anybody.
So long story short, the establishment tried to extend this olive branch by making registration a little bit longer, and Al Gerhardt took issue with me for registering within the time constraints that the establishment had allowed through their one and only official online portal. And
no, he didn't.
I heard about
actually,
last minute.
He didn't actually criticize you for taking opportunity there.
Well, that's what it said in the comment that he tagged me.
No, he criticized actually, and I talked to him last night about it. Was what should have happened with people that registered after that 7 days is supposed to be, they're supposed to be approved either by the executive committee, so they can tell the credentials committee, go ahead and seat them, we've approved them, or in the absence of that, the credentials committee should have a vote on that or present it to the people. Meanwhile, they should be provisional delegates. This is not anything unique to YRs.
Great. So this is just for the current power structure to address and for the already established officers to handle.
Yeah.
And they handled it the way they saw fit.
Yeah.
The end.
John Roberts, who was the chair, he actually made I would say, a dictatorial decision. He admitted he made some pretty serious fundamental errors. One of the things is, and the credentials committee, they should have just made them provisional and have the other credentialed delegates vote to let them in, because it was after the 7 days.
Well, they're so used to just making decisions by fiat, they just did what they
Exactly.
were accustomed to.
And this time,
it bit them in the tuchus.
it bit them. And so
Yikes.
it got so contentious that, and they presented the credentials report.
I just have to interject, and afterwards I thanked John Roberts. I don't know him that well, because although I don't agree with all the decisions he made, and we have different perspectives, it seems, on policy, and which faction we supported, it seemed like he supported the leftist faction, the establishment faction. I always support the conservative faction, which is the only reason I go to political events. I'm a very simple man. I exist to promote conservatism and constitutional ideas. That's it. That's the only reason I do anything with politics. And so I attended this convention to advance conservative ideals and to hope to make this club into something that actually exists to promote conservative ideals. That's it. And so I was late to the game. I'm pretty transparent about that. But John Roberts, according to his own ruling, I signed up and signed up others the week of the convention through the one and only official online portal, supporting the rule set that John created. But I told him afterwards, I said, it seems like you tried to extend an olive branch and suspending the rules to accommodate the opposition, big of you, but you were bludgeoned with it. So, you give someone an inch to take a mile. That happens everywhere. But
we've set the table now.
Sounds like multiple chefs in the soup.
Here's what I'm going to tell you what the establishment did, and then D'Ambroso will tell you what his faction did as a result of it.
So here we are this weekend, right?
Because everybody was given a badge and access to the floor and access to vote. Again, no provisional delegates that have to be voted on by the others to be let in because they're late. Okay. So they present it, and the floor votes down the credentials report. Said, no, we are not going to be one group of, 30 who are going to share 5 votes so that we're each 1/6 of a vote. Meanwhile, you might have 5 people from Oklahoma City from that chapter.
They're 10 votes.
And, they actually get 20.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so 5 people get 20.
No person can have more than 2 votes.
That's true. That's true. So they did have that catch-all.
I know you guys wanted to know that.
Right. So John realizing, okay, here's the deal. The bylaws, as best John understood, and not only him, I mean, there were other people. Michael Edwards was another, and Seth Rott, were
He
saying...
tried to do some of a good thing, but not enough of a
Well,
good thing. That was the problem with John, ultimately.
Hang on, you'll get your chance here. I'm going to tell you what they did, then you'll talk about what you're.
You don't have to tell me, I was there.
Okay, so they weren't. So, well, some of them were. But anyway, so they realized they didn't handle the credentialing right. So now we got a bunch of people with the right to vote that we haven't even determined that they're credentialed properly because they're too late. Okay? So then John decides, and again, it's not a convention until the credentialed delegates are seated. Until then, it's a mob. You don't believe it? Ask my mentor, John Wright, our county assessor, one of the most trained parliamentarians. So he pulls the plug. He says, you know what? Until we get this fixed, we can't have this convention because we've got bylaws that several of us who've been doing this for years have always interpreted this way, but now we got this faction that says, well, that can't be right. And it is poorly worded. It is. It's vague. So he just says, you know what, we're going home. And shut out the lights, y'all leave. And so D'Ambrosa didn't want to leave. He drove too far. He was excited.
Well, that's a poor way to run a
tell him what happened
I
next.
I didn't care about that. I'm accustomed to driving across the state to do political things. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I don't even want to look at.
Well,
some
of your compadres very much complained. They said we drove a long way.
Yeah, well, and I might feel that way
bad
too
way,
if I drove from Guyman or something 5 hours away in the Panhandle to have 15 minutes of it looks like we don't have the votes to win, so party's shut down.
You choose to live there too, don't you?
Sure.
Hi, Kenny Bob.
I got to drive from there. That was fun.
I mean, here's the thing. I hope to be fair and reasonable, and they seem to, the establishment and John Roberts and that crowd seem to want to make some moves towards accommodation of the conservative faction.
Okay. We set the table. Tell us, you got the exciting part. I want
wasn't enough. Okay. Trust me, I'll summarize and move quickly here. And so essentially it was kind of a provision like you get more representation but not enough to matter. And so people weren't happy with that, and he did the thing that he felt was most expedient. And so I don't criticize him for it. He found that to be rational.
Then what happened?
So he essentially adjourns the meeting.
Yes.
But there's a parliamentary action that was called for called division. Hey, I don't trust your built-in little seismograph inside your ear to determine how many people said yay versus nay. So let's have a count. And it's a really cool little motion because then you get to know for sure. And some of us like to know for sure. So he didn't honor that. And I understand it was very frustrating. It was very contentious. That's what we're leaving out.
I'm sorry, what didn't he honor? I want to be sure.
There's a call for division, which means let's count the people that said, yay to adjourning versus nay to let's not adjourn. And so that just wasn't done. So on those grounds and some others, I don't really know. I'm not that much of a parliamentarian. It's incredibly boring, like endless exposition. It seems like maybe the convention wasn't really close. So long story short, the conservative faction remained and had its own convention that was live streamed on the Book of Faces and elsewhere. And notes were taken, and that was sent to the National Young Republicans Committee, and they will make a ruling on whether that was correct. And this conservative faction elected its own slate of conservative leaders. The story.
So is it a splinter group now, or is it suggesting that it takes over the group that it was?
Yes, it's possible. It's possible that
Which is possible.
If, I'll explain. If the conservative faction can prove that it has recruited more people than are currently involved in the current charter, perhaps the conservative faction, my faction, will be granted, separate organization. But I don't want to just ignore that 45% of the establishment fellows that were there. I want to find a way to extend an olive branch to them and see what we can agree on. And maybe we can't agree on anything because I'll say Some of these guys running for officers, I'm not going to name them by name right now. I mean, they hate President Trump openly. Personally accosted me for supporting the president at conservative
No, I
meetings.
think if you're going to say that, you should at least tell us who you tell. Who are you claiming hates Trump?
I'm not going to say. But, no, this is, you can check it out. I mean, you can look at it. If you're more interested, you can ask me in private or something. I'm just not going to say the guy's name. Because here's the thing. I don't want to give him any credit. By saying his name, you know, I just don't want to give him any, I don't want to give him any play here. So I'm not going to say his name.
I'm going to say it's cowardly, man.
Maybe, call it whatever you want, whatever announces it.
Too bad Olden's not here.
These are facts, though. So he doesn't support the president. You can probably figure out who this guy is.
Oh.
He runs a candidate's campaign that's running for CD5, the congressional seat against Kendrick Lamar. That is a D- from the NRA.
Are you talking about Bluebaugh?
This person wants to expand
You're talking
Medicare.
about Matt Bluebaugh. You say
Yeah,
Matt hates Trump.
Well, he publicly accosted someone for liking Trump. And let's see here. You know, he just wants to expand taxes. He worked for the opposition to our current great governor, Stitt. And by extension, he wrote a letter to the United States Senate begging them not to eliminate Obamacare. So is this the kind of person you want running a young Republican club? So the grievances were kind of heavy on the conservative side. And you know, the point was brought up, perhaps the gentleman would feel more at home in a young Democrat.
Okay, so Matt Bluebaugh, you're saying he was running for party, young Republican state chair?
Yeah, and I want to mention, too, by the way...
Was he? I need to know. Was he?
He was.
Okay.
And Gerhardt criticized, and that's fine. You know, I personally like Al. We're on opposite sides of this. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
We're adult
Hi,
people.
Al. You're drug into this.
And
now.
we can just, well, yeah, he's tagging me and stuff. And, you know, I'd love to sit down with him and have a talk, even with Seth Rott and some guys. I called Seth. He didn't call me back. He's on the, what I call the leftist faction, the establishment faction. They say, hey, let's see if we can work this out. But here's the deal. Al was very upset that I brought people to the group.
You were a Ron Paul supporter, right, in 12?
In 08.
Well, what about 12?
I didn't like Romney.
No, Ron Paul.
Yes, I supported Ron Paul in the primary.
I think so did Seth Rott. That's
Did he?
interesting, yeah.
That is interesting.
Okay, so.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That doesn't have anything to do with policy today, as it turns out, because we disagree on a lot. But I want to say there were people on this leftist establishment group that had brought extra people to the event simply for stacking the vote. And there were people that I spoke to, and we can confirm this, Al. His criticism of me is, well, you brought people there. Yeah, I brought people there. That's kind of one of the things I do politically.
You know, it's funny.
I bring people to the fore to knock doors for candidates, to support candidates, to vote for issues.
I'm going to tell you, stacking the vote here, because you notice the national media, when a liberal wins, it's the people spoke. But if a conservative wins, well, Trump stacked the vote. You know?
Yeah, well, it goes back even to the Tea Party. They go down a little short rabbit hole. At first, they denied that it was even happening in the town hall meetings, that there was antithetical feeling to Obama's great future vision for America. Then they said they were paid Republican activists. They were paid by the party. And then they just said, okay, well, this is legitimate, but these people are insane. So this is what happened. There are lots of people supporting the establishment that were brought there just for the purposes of voting, and they had never attended a wire event before. I'm going to say that again. They were brought there, and I didn't complain. Because our side was doing it, both sides were doing this. And by the way, it's not against the rules. So Al has taken umbrage here that people are following the rules in a way he doesn't like, and that's his prerogative. He's allowed to do that, and I can simply say, I disagree, and if people have a problem with it, maybe we should just change the rules.
Yeah, well, I think John Roberts actually bent the rules for sure.
Yeah, but the establishment allowed for this to happen.
But did not follow through with the proper approval of those who came in. Because here's the thing. If you reward people who aren't following the rules, you're actually punishing people who do follow the rules.
Yes.
You know, so that's great. They just made a very simple mistake, but it was a very costly thing. And you know, when you go to convention, you see all the structure and form, and you think it's silly. Now we find out it's not silly.
So it hangs around the neck, you know, the implosion of the whole convention hangs around the neck of the establishment. They created the conditions.
Tell us what happened in the parking lot.
I literally did. I summarized it probably in about 22 seconds.
Okay.
A conservative convention was held of remaining delegates, and they elected a slate of officers. And the national group, now for the second time, the national wires will decide if they honor that occurrence or not.
Yeah,
The end. Or another convention will be reconvened, which is probable. I mean, a lot of us conservative guys, myself and Nathan Dom included, think they're just going to have another convention.
I think so. I think because there's problems with both the parking lot one and the one in the auditorium.
Well, nothing's perfect.
Yeah, right. They both have fundamental problems of parliamentary procedure.
And it's a fundamental failure of leadership that no one can come in and unify both sides to say, let's at least have a coalition. Let's have maybe a semblance of a parliamentary government, where we have coalitions. Fine, yeah, maybe you have one issue or two. Maybe you don't agree with me. My contention is I don't think you're a Republican if you disagree with the platform on every single issue. And there were people at this event like that, and I can prove it. They're publicly held positions. So that I find that disingenuous, but if you're a conservative somewhere, yes, let's have a coalition and work together where we can work together and simply choose to disagree where we disagree.
Yeah.
It seems like this might be a symptom of really a good problem overall. I think one of the reasons we have this show is to inform the electorate and get people more involved in politics. And I think perhaps what's been going on with this group is they've got some poorly written bylaws and some poorly written stuff, and it really has never been an issue because they've had so few people involved that really care.
Yes.
So little accuracy worried about that they've just been able to wing it each time.
Yeah.
But each year, more people have showed, and you bring a level of accuracy that maybe they're not used to. You want to call for a number, and they're really not used to that.
Well,
and I'm just saying, it was kind of a perfect storm. Had they started earlier and had their ducks in a row with their credentialed people, they might have been able to organize with leaders. But they let everything lax to the very last second, and nothing was well written enough to pull it out. And then to call it off when you've got everybody there, that's a cop out and real poor leadership.
Excellent analysis, but I'm going to defend the establishment here. I think they were left with no choice. I think they had to because
if they were left with no choice,
because tactically, we wouldn't let them move on. And there's nowhere to go.
Well, they built a poor system of running it.
Yes, that is their fault.
Let me say this. Probably about 4 years ago, Scott Chance was the state chair, and he had a very vibrant and thriving group. And we've had a couple people since then that have just kind of disappeared, moved out of state, and left it kind of like, it was basically John Roberts and a couple of his longtime, connections. Associates that like, okay, we got to get a convention. We got to get some new blood in here. And I think the numbers are down.
Well, he's definitely new blood, right?
Right. So well, and you get people in the establishment apparently, and Al included, which, I'm going to talk to Al about this, that are complaining that I'm registering people to be members of. And by the way, one of the guys that I brought, actually both of them, one of them had a really extended conversation with Senator Dom, learned a lot, and has been learning, and has switched parties from Democrat to Republican. This is months ago, based upon my social media account. And I really talked to this person.
Is that one of those people that was being criticized as they actually were Democrats, but they switched over to Republican?
A little bit different. This is a guy who switched over months ago based upon.
But this is one of the good switches, not one of the bad switches.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, somebody's talking about some bad switches and that they're just coming over to take over.
No, this isn't a person. This isn't a person who switched for the purposes of this event.
Okay.
But I don't want to get too in the weeds on it.
I do.
Well, fine. I just want to move quickly. I think we've been on this topic already too long.
And I do want to say,
I just want to finish a brief point.
I did talk to a number of people in the wake of this from both sides of it. In fact, last night I talked to our former state party chair and former state auditor, probably our best state auditor, Gary Jones. And he's, we just talked in broad sense, his dealing with running a party and are you going to have a vibrant youth or young voter program?
Right.
And he said where it's typically gone off the rails is when they become more of a social club. because then the cliques start to form, and then the exclusions start happening, and you aren't part of this clique because you weren't part of this campaign that I was in with, or maybe you have different priorities. And it needs to be a truly multicultural young Republican state organization where they might do one thing in Norman that they don't do out in Woodward, and they might do something in Tahlequah that they don't do in Lawton.
It's got to be policy primary.
Yeah,
I think so. And tell me who this group is elected, right? Like, tell me what positive effect this group has had on moving the needle towards conservatism.
Nice. Yeah.
And you know what? The people who do nothing do less. Okay. No, I'm sorry. What standard are you going to say is enough to justify having an organization? I mean,
something to show.
It's not enough. It's not
something.
Enough. It's a metric.
Anything.
Okay. Listen. Take John Roberts, who you had a problem with, and I've had lots of problems with John Roberts. But
he was conciliatory. I talked to him afterwards.
Right.
I really didn't have a problem with him.
I've had lots of problems with John Roberts, but I've also worked with him to get some major foundational changes made to the party, and that. So the thing about John,
he seems like a person that can be reasoned with.
Well,
and I respect him for that.
He's done
we
more.
Disagree.
He's done more for the Republican Party in his last decade with them than you or I have done.
Like what?
But again, you don't do anything. Nobody can criticize.
What has he done? You can't just say, what's your evidence?
What
has he accomplished?
The fact that you don't know just tells me how little you've been involved.
Okay, well, tell me what he's done. I'm just waiting for number one.
He was the executive director from 2013 to 15.
What did he accomplish?
Okay.
It's like Hillary Clinton's a woman in politics. It's not an accomplishment.
But I think you disagree with some of his.
When you're executive director, it's not your job to do the accomplishing. You are keeping house.
Facilitated.
Yeah,
He's
you're running the day in, day out stuff. Your chairman is the one who sets the agenda.
I can believe that.
All right, let's tune in our viewers. You're in the middle of the deep weeds of the Young Republicans convention here last week.
Inside politics.
Inside politics.
Well, I had to wrap on one thing very briefly. We're getting criticism, and I mean we, the conservative group, for bringing in new blood. And what I wanted to say, the two guys that I brought from Tulsa area with me loved it. And one of them even made a Facebook post. I'm really excited to get involved with politics, and now I will be involved with Republican politics.
That's a good thing.
Mission accomplished. It is not a bad thing to bring in.
Let me tell you, the next YR State Convention will be one of the biggest, most attended, most supported that we've seen in the last decade. Bar none. That's a good thing.
And maybe we give John Roberts some credit for that.
Yeah, and I'm just, right. But now Luke Harshaw was one who ended up being elected by the Rump Convention on the parking lot. I've known Luke. I think I have more confidence in Luke than probably just about anybody who attended that. And I reached out to him, and he's gonna, do it. He didn't want to make a public statement. I'm not gonna tell you what he said, but I think he's got a good.
I think that's cowardly, David.
No, I think it's called good journalism. When
people talk